welcome to today to our kind of Let's Chat Money Tree Fundraising major donors. I see lots of new faces, lots of existing faces. Lovely to see you. As usual, I'm going to start with a bit of a recap, a bit of a theme for today. So today's theme, I've gone for 5 things to do in a new major donor role. So that's not to say that I want you all to go out and get new roles or that some of you are new to major donor fundraising. I think if you are an existing role, these kind of 5 things are quite handy to reflect on. So I'll probably talk you through these. I've got a couple of questions throughout that you might want to answer. Again, hands up welcome. Also doing a bit in the chat is always welcome, and then we'll move on to maybe some Q&As, any questions people have got, do a bit of a group share, because we always seem to solve problems together, which is what we're aiming for. So, in case you don't know me, I'm Hannah Shepherd. I'm a Philanthropy Fundraising Consultant at Money Tree Fundraising. What does that mean? That basically means I work with a variety of fundraisers and charities, large, small, in the middle, whatever, UK based, to help solve their high value fundraising challenges. So I am out and out major donor specialist because I'm just really geeky and nosy and passionate about major donor fundraising. As some of you know, I started off originally in regional community fundraising. I've also done a bit around corporate, potentially corporate new business. I have led teams of all different sizes around high value giving. So that includes corporate, trusts and foundations and major donor fundraising. And also I've worked on some large capital appeals as well. And probably my bit of my specialism, if that's not enough, would be around volunteer fundraising boards and kind of working with our higher value givers to unlock more donations through the power of collective giving. Again, I could talk about what's coming up with that and Money Tree later on. But today I wanted to do the 5 things to consider when you're new to a major donor role. So excuse this, it's a busy slide, apologies, I'm just testing how alert you are around lunchtime. But my number 1 tip would be understand the expectations of your role. If you are new into a role or your role's changing, or you're getting new responsibilities, think about what your role entails. And as a major donor fundraiser or somebody responsible for raising the major donor income, that is your number 1 job. It's about raising that income. And simply put, how do we do this? Break it down really simply, because in our day-to-day lives, in our organisations, things get really complicated really easily and very quickly. So simply, our job's to build those relationships with donors, and it's to make those asks. And from that, we'll get income, which is brilliant. And to do that, we know that we can't do that alone. Our organisations aren't run by one person, so we always need to draw on that kind of team support. So that's our managers, our colleagues, our chief execs, trustees, other major donors as well that will talk about their support and support the organisation, and obviously volunteers, because they're giving up their time for free. So they've got to be pretty passionate, don't they? And then when we're trying to understand our roles and trying to work out what to do, we really need to understand what we're going to be measured by. So I'm sure quite a few of you may have like KPIs, key performance indicators. I mean, number 1, we're measured by income, right? As a fundraiser, our role is to raise that money. We're measured the success by the income we raise. But we know that also lots of other things go into that. And sometimes if our roles are feeling tricky or sticky, or, you know, we need to kind of draw on other aspects as well, there can be other KPIs that can kind of build us towards that income goal. So it could be things like I've put down here as engaged donors. It could be things like how many event participants we've got signed up to an upcoming cultivation event. It could also be something like, you know, progressing through the stages of a major donor fundraising cycle if you use that within your organisation. If you don't and you want me to talk about it on this call, I'm happy to do so in a little bit. It might be meetings. I don't know. Does anyone have any other kind of KPIs that they use, that they track, that they find useful, that they want to share? Don't worry, pop it in the chat and I'll pick it up in a little bit. So number two for me is really important when you're new into a role is understanding the culture pyramid. And you may have come across this before about the things that are visible and also hidden. So sometimes people call it pyramids, some people call it icebergs. Today I've gone for a pyramid. So this is really understanding the culture in which your role and your fundraising sits. So things right at the top that are visible are kind of symbols and language. You know, how do people talk about the charity? How do they talk about the people kind of supported? I'm going to move away from the word, you know, do they use, for example, they use beneficiaries, or do they use people who are supported, or, you know, what do you use? Feel free to pop that in the chat. Again, I always get caught out with animal causes, and if anyone's an animal cause here, you know, I slip sometimes to want to say people and I get corrected. So let me know what, you know, what kind of symbols and language does your organisation use, and what kind of things quite early on do you need to pick up on, adapt and introduce into your kind of lexicon at work. Another thing that's really important to understand is kind of the norms and patterns of behaviour in the workplace. Now, by all means, I'm not going on here, I don't mean to sound like I'm doing some kind of personal development training, but there is a point to this for the fundraising. But, you know, what kind of norms are there? How do people kind of get things signed off, or how do they work with maybe their finance colleagues? Like, what kind of, do they have a systems and processes in place, or is it really just kind of grab someone or just message on Teams? You know, how do things get done, and how does it get done successfully? And then the bit that's quite tricky, especially when you're new, is kind of those fundamental assumptions and values. And this sometimes is the hidden stuff that you kind of pick up on later on, or someone has to point out to you. You know, can you, you know, what are those kind of things for your organisation, and what could it play into? And so, as I said, this is kind of really important because it does affect your fundraising, because it can have an impact with the relationship you have with your donors. So, for example, if as an organisation you use lots of, I can think of the words on the tip of my tongue, abbreviations, that's the one. If you use lots of abbreviations, are you taking that into your spoken word with donors? Are you putting it into your written communications? Do those donors even know what that means? You know, things like CRM can even catch us out within the charity sector. Are you talking about your database, or are you talking about a cause-related marketing product in a corporate position? So yeah, that can be really challenging, can't it? And then as a new person, where can you maybe see examples like that and add a bit of positive value to make it clearer for the donor, clearer for yourself, but also just kind of make sure that the culture that you have, and we'll talk about a positive culture, hopefully, in your organisation, that is kind of feeding out and shining out to your supporters. Okay, number 3, who should you be speaking to? So I think there's 2 big elements of this. You're new, you're through the door. Of course you want to speak to everyone, but you need a bit of a plan to do it. And first off, you need to work out who you need to be speaking to. So first off, I'd be thinking about who you can speak to internally. So these are, as it says, the people in your organisation. So, you know, first day usually starts off with your line manager. It probably also starts off with other fundraisers within either your team or in different disciplines within your organisation if you're fortunate to have them. So, you know, it's really good to get to know your kind of other high value fundraising colleagues. So if there is someone else who works with you or supports you with trusts and foundations, if you've got someone that works with corporate partnerships, you know, get to know them because you're going to overlap quite a lot. Also possibly volunteers. You might have volunteers that come and work in the office or work remotely with you that are really well plugged in. If we're talking about high value fundraising, major donor fundraising, your chief exec and some of your senior staff are going to be really core to the outcomes of your fundraising, and you're going to be pulling on them and kind of getting to know them and involving them at the most appropriate stages. So obviously getting to know your chief exec. And oh, my little graph doesn't quite show this perfectly, but there's also a really, really important person that I always tell everyone to make friends with and get to know. And I mean, in a genuine way, is the executive assistant to your chief exec. If your chief exec has a executive assistant, a PA, someone that supports them with their diary, you want to know who that person is. You want them to know who you are, because when you're going to be looking for those opportunities to get thank you letters signed off or a quick phone call from the chief exec to a donor, you want to be able to see where they can find time, manipulate time, you know, shout and champion the type of fundraising and the relationship that you're building with donors with the chief exec. There's some more on there that I think are really important. The obvious one is around project staff as well. And finance teams, the budget, do you need to be thinking around cost recovery as part of a donation as well? Can your finance team help you work out what that could be? And then you can think about how to phrase that in the most attractive way to a donor. Database team. If you are fortunate to have someone that also manages, cleans up, just a bit of analysing data for you, you want to get to know them. They're going to tell you loads about the supporter base, about existing donors. They may be able to help you identify trends with lapsed donors. You know, they're going to be a font of knowledge for donor behaviour across the organisation. Plus, they'll probably also teach you some shortcuts and tricks and hints to get around whatever database that you're using. And then obviously in there, I've included trustees. You know, they are also going to be vocal supporters of your fundraising. So what's next? And apologies, I can see things coming in on the chat. And I will definitely get back to them as well very, very shortly, because I think some of them are questions. Number 4, who should you be speaking to again? Oh, sorry, I think this is where my presentation's gone wrong. My numbers have gone. But anyway, this is still part of 3. Who else should you be speaking to externally? So your number 1, you want your existing donors. If you're new or you picked up a new portfolio from someone else, you want to get to know them. Who are they? Why do they support? What got them interested? You know, how do they give? How do they like to give? How do they like to hear from you? Obviously, all those questions in a natural sounding interaction would be brilliant. And the same kind of goes for some influential supporters. You know, who else is supporting your organisation externally? Do you have some local champions? Do you have some ones on a regional basis? You know, do you have your deputy lieutenants, and if you've got them in your county, are they supporting you? Are they interested in speaking up about your organisation? Do you have some national supporters who are highly influential? If you're in the health sector, for example, do you have some NHS leaders that are willing to kind of give you a bit of insight about their knowledge about your cause? You know, provoke and, you know, help you stimulate your thinking in the early days as well. Also things like DAF advisors. So if you're not aware, a DAF is a donor advised fund. So these are giving vehicles. So how a lot of major donors are making their major gifts these days. They have been for a long time. But obviously DAFs are one of the growing kind of charitable vehicles in the UK for high net worth donations. You know, do you have any DAF advisors that already support some of your donors? Can you chat to them? What can they share about not necessarily their donors per se, but trends, why people consider giving towards your cause? All these things can give you a really good perspective when you're new about how your organisation's perceived and what messages are getting out there, and maybe what messages you want to get out aren't quite there yet. And the same, you know, we are really lucky to have some great fundraising leaders out there. So consultants or coaches or trainers, you know, as and when consult with them, pick their brains, follow them on LinkedIn, sign up to their newsletters, you know, see what else is out there that can kind of give you the most rounded picture that you need to do your job. Is there any other suggestions possibly? Let me know if you've got any other suggestions of people that you would suggest. Feel free, pop them in the chat. And then what was, I thought, my slide number 4. There we go. See, that's why it's gone out blind. You're new in. You're like, got an idea. This might be your first gig in major donor fundraising. It might be your 50th. I can tell you, every organisation, what they class as a major gift can vary. So I think one of the first things I'd always say is work out what counts as a major gift. What is your remit? Like, where is it gifts from £1,000? Is it gifts from 5,000? Is it gifts from, I know, £10,000? What classes as a major gift? And what then you can kind of build your expectations and kind of your program from that if it's not something that is established fully. And as part of that, getting that definition is really key, because in your early few days and weeks, and even if you're doing a bit of a major donor fundraising campaign in your organisation, you want to be able to say definitively, this is a major donation, this is a major gift, this is what, in an amount wise, we're looking for. And then you really want to find out and know what a major gift can fund. So not, and I've gone purposely for can, because I want a bit more certainty rather than could, because sometimes, and I'm sure we've all worked in organisations like this, it's like anything or the sky's the limit. And that's true. And that's brilliant, isn't it, about fundraising, that it could be anything. But we've got to always, part of our job is keeping the realism there, isn't it? So I think what's really important is looking at what is viable. So what right now in our organisation is viable? So I point to 3 parts in this slide. So the past. So we know from past major donor gifts, we know what is possible, what it can fund, what the impact it's had, and what the legacy will be of that gift, or roughly what the legacy will be, because everything changes over time. Then you want to know what's in the, oh, it should be the present. See, there we go. My slides have messed up again. The present. So what's probable as of today? If we got a gift of X amount of money, what could we fund? What would that be? What would that look like? And you want to know what your options are, because that's the thing that you might be starting to talk to donors as you start having your early conversations. And then you want to know what is going to be viable in the future. So a bit of a wish list. It could indeed be a wish list. It could be 3 years out, 5 years out. It could be, this is possible if we got £1 million in the door. And you want to know what that is, because that's something that you're also, over time, going to be weaving into conversations. You're going to be looking for donors who could have potential or networks at that level. And also, building these major donor relationships is taking someone on a journey, isn't it? So you're naturally going to want to take them into the future at some point and give them that bigger picture vision. So that's when you want to know early on. You want to know what they've funded in the past, what they're funding at the moment, and what they can fund in the future. Next, she says, we have number 5, right? Oh, sorry, guys, a bit slow. There we go. And my 5th and final point is avoid doing too much at once. It's really hard when you're new. You come in with fresh eyes, you can see loads of things that you'd like to tweak or change or improve, or you go, oh, I've done that before, I know how to make that better. That's great. I would definitely say note everything down in the early stages so you do not forget that kind of buzz and that feeling straight off. But avoid doing too much. So try and avoid launching into multiple initiatives. So if there's lots of things going on across the organisation that you could support with, or major donors could fund, you know, just be mindful that you don't want to be, you know, creating yourself, I don't know, 6 different funding options if it's just you as a fundraiser, you know? And in that as well, if you're launching lots of new things as well, you might be overlooking the existing stuff that's doing really well. So just be really mindful for that as well. And also really think about reining in the urge possibly to kind of set unrealistic promises or expectations. You need to give yourself a bit of time to bed in and get a feel of the land. And I know that's hard because every organisation, you know, we need to hit the ground running and we want to get income, we want to do this, and we've got big plans. But if where possible, just take a step back and give yourself a breather, not to commit to anything too soon before you fully understand kind of the context you're in. So yeah, positive things I've said, you know, set those realistic targets and expectations. Don't, you know, sit on your bum and twiddle your fingers, but think what is viable, what can I achieve, you know, within the first month, 3 months, 6 months, year. And like I said, build on those successes, you know, look at what's going really well. Like, does your organisation have a really firm hold major donor kind of support base that's come from one particular area or donor? How can you build on that to get more success? And take a bit of a structured approach to major donor fundraising. I don't want to say major donor fundraising is just a process, but is there, you know, can you take an approach where you are building on kind of like the stages of major donor fundraising? Can you track that? Can you, you know, show that what you're doing is having an impact now and it will continue to do in the future? Okay, so I've whittled on a lot about that, but those are kind of my 5 kind of top takeaways. I hope they've been useful. Hopefully, even if you've been in a role for a while, it'll also feel quite relevant. Just looking back on some of the comments, I can see from probably slide 1, Cheryl, you've said that you're measured on the number of people brought from a mid-level giving program to the major donor. Exactly. So if we go back, where were we on slide 1? To understanding expectations of your role, you know, what are you measured by? And again, that's a really common one as well. If you've got a mid-level giving program, looking at developing donors, transitioning them into the major donor program, growing their engagement, growing their giving, that's a great one. Emma, you put a great comment in there, and you've got, we're starting from scratch. So it's the number of supporters engaged in 2-way stewarding, a number of new meetings and coffees. I love that. Really, really enjoy that. 2-way stewarding. Do you want to explain that, Emma, for those that might not understand what that means? Is that all right?
Yeah, of course. And actually, this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you as well, actually, Hannah. So we've been quite lucky. I've got 48 on my pipeline at the moment. Only a couple of those are realistically going to move forward to being potentially a major donor. The rest I'm kind of stewarding. We've also done our wealth screening, which has given me a whole load of other people to re-engage. So but yes, the 2-way stewarding is just getting an answer back from the people that you're stewarding, which I'm finding really hard. So we're very lucky with it. Was an ex-donor who gave 5 years ago, and I started to steward her. I think I sent about 5 emails and updates to her, didn't get any reply at all, and then suddenly I got a reply and she gave a gift of 10,000, which is fantastic. So yeah, but also my question around that as well, Hannah, was just like, how many touch points do you make with a potential donor before you kind of give up and, you know, think I'm not getting anything back, I'm just annoying them now?
Oh, Emma, do you know what? You have given a very good example of why sometimes it's worth persevering and contacting donors, because obviously you've got that 10,000 gift out of it.
Yeah.
I would say what you experience, I'm sure loads of other people will say the same, what you experience and what we all kind of experience, and Cheryl, I'm glad to see you've got the same question as well, is it's quite common. So my theory is why it's quite common is major donors themselves tend to be quite busy people. You know, they are in, not on the whole, but there can be quite a few times where they are in high pressure jobs, they're time poor, there's other things going on in their lives. You can say that about most of us these days as well. So it isn't unlikely for a major donor to not reply, or a major donor prospect not to reply to your first or second piece of communication. And do you know what? If you do start getting that two-way stewarding kind of conversation and feedback, sometimes it's good to ask that questions of what was it that caught your eye in the end, so you know. But realistically, every piece of communication that you are sending to a prospect, you want it to be of the best quality, of your highest standard. Now, I don't mean that it's got to be like printed and perfect, but you know, the tone's got to be right. And you know, it's something that you would want to receive and that you wouldn't be affronted by or find was nagging, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't say there's a number of what you can send before, you know, magic number of 3 or 5 or 7 before they engage. But what I would say is be really considered about what you send them, and also try and find out as much about them as possible as part of the process. So if you're not getting anything back, you know, try different ways. Try the email, try the phone call. I think my biggest tip as well to stop it feeling like that you may feel you're pestering them, or for them to come back and be like, oh God, you've just overwhelmed me, is I always say try and go to them as part of that communication with a bit of a question or a solution to something. So for example, if they've once been a donor, so I'm going to call them a lapsed donor, so they've given before, but they've just stopped giving, you know, could you, you know, as part of your email, could it be that, you know, you say we're trying to reach out to some of our former supporters because we are launching a new campaign, or we've got a new awareness program, and we just want to get your thoughts and opinions on it. Would you be willing to have a call with me in the coming weeks? Sometimes something like that with an action attached lands better than say something where you're sending lots of newsletters out and it's just one way and there's not a kind of reason for them to reply. That said, one of my most successful gifts, I had what I'm going to call a lapsed donor in my portfolio for 2.5 years, probably, possibly even 3 years. And I sent them regular updates about the organisation, about their previous work. And it took about 3 years before they started engaging with me. And it turned out, I used to plot, I was quite structured, I used to think, you know, what is it that really gets them? And in the end, it turned out that the one thing that they wanted to fund, that really captured their interest, was maternal health. And an opportunity came up with the organisation I was working with to part fund a maternal health programme. And so I reached out to them again and said, look, we've got this opportunity. Would you be interested in considering it, or just learning a bit more about it? And that was the hook that got them in. But I can vouch for you, and if any of you have worked with me, can't stand, I've got colleagues that were with me at that time, but it was 2.5 years. And I remember the person I used to sit next to, when finally they said they would meet me, or they said, and then they said they'd fund it. My goodness, did we celebrate in the office, because it had been one of those slogs. So does that help, Emma, at all?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Hannah. Yeah, it's
Does it?
I know. I just think I'm just keep on trucking is my mantra at the moment. And I'm getting a few bites in, but yeah, but that's a really positive story. That's great.
And the thing is, if you're getting bites, you're doing the right thing, Emma. You are getting
Right,
it.
yeah,
Not to say if you're not getting anything, you're doing something wrong. But if you're getting bites, you're obviously ticking the kind of box of what they want from you or what they're
uh-huh.
interested in. Because they're
Yeah,
kind of coming back to you. They're almost like, it's almost like testing the waters. Because we don't know what people's circumstances are. You know, they may not be in a position to give right now, but they might be thinking about their next gift. And
yeah,
just those little bits that you're sending them is kind of warming them up for that as well. So Cheryl, I hope
good.
that answers your question as well to that. If
Thank
not,
Thank you, that's great.
lovely. Just going back through the chat as well. Let me have a look. Tara, you said also starting from scratch, 1.2 million charity turnover, currently 1% of donations from major donors over £1,000. So you are measuring meetings, coffees, or there is a desire from the CEO to put some financial KPIs in place for 5 years. Oh, interested to know your views on this. Right, Tara, I tell you what, you've just reminded me of something. On this measured by, and this goes back again to the cultural pyramid, I learnt in one organisation that one of the hidden measures of success was the number of meetings I facilitated for the chief exec with major donors. This was never explicitly said, it was never explicitly put in my KPIs, but it was one of those hidden values, going back to this pyramid, where the chief exec expected to be in front of major donors on a regular basis in my portfolio. And so that's just come back to me as a measure of success or a measure of performance. So gosh, Tara, what do you want me to touch on first? Do you want me to touch on the fact of 5-year KPIs or financial KPIs? What would be most helpful?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, probably the 5-year KPIs I think would be really useful.
So are they thinking that they're doing an organisation or a fundraising strategy for the next 5 years? Is that where the thinking's come from?
Exactly. And how can we plan and budget for major donor income?
Okay. And Tara, is your major donor programme quite new or early in its establishment?
It's brand new, so there have been people giving sporadically, a group of people who wouldn't know that they were major donors. It's just that we've identified them as such, basically. So now we've got some focus and resource to actually steward those people, to look after them, and hopefully bring more on board. But yeah, basically brand new.
Okay. So in a nutshell, I could probably do a whole session on this, and I am thinking of doing one because I think this is a really common issue. So I think it's really admirable for your organisation to be thinking 5 years out, right? That is really structured thinking. If we're thinking about high value donations and how long it can sometimes take for them to come through the door, it's not unreasonable to be plotting and thinking 5 years out. However, you've got quite a small program. So what I would be suggesting, either yourself or line managers, would be to push really for breaking down those 5 years. So looking at what financial KPIs you have maybe for 12 months, maybe looking at what you could do in 18 months, 3 years, and then 5 years. And then looking at the measures that you use at the moment, so your meetings, your coffees, your current income, and kind of showing where your growth could be, then you could possibly put some figures towards that. Now, like I say, it's a bit of an in-depth piece of work. Funnily enough, I've just been doing some for a children's hospice recently around this. But I think you need to start small, and I think you need to know what if you've got some history of maybe what you've raised last year, if you've even done a year's worth of major donor fundraising, that's really good evidence. What you've done this year as well, an income. And use those kind of all those things like the coffees and the engagement opportunities as like a stepping stone to grow the income. And I think it's about breaking it down to make it manageable. And major donor income, especially on an early program, doesn't always go upwards like that or that way, depending which way I'm on the screen for you. You often see that you have like a really good peak initially, and then it dips, and then it picks up again, and it can be a bit squiggly. Or it can be rogue, where it kind of shoots off the scale because you get a really great exceptional gift, and then it looks like you've completely fallen off the cliff, but that's just because you've not had as big a gift for the following year. And then you kind of go back up again. So each organization is very different, especially when you're starting from an early kind of small program. But what you want to do is you want to be showing that you can grow responsibly and in a staged manner each year. And to do that, I'm very happy to chat to you about that offline as well. But I think definitely think about KPIs. That helps track work, that helps you as a fundraiser as well, knowing where you sit within the organisation for when it comes to performance reviews, but also to kind of flag and say, do you know what, we're missing a trick here and we're not tracking this. And it takes the pressure off that, you know, you're not sitting there maybe at this time of the year, at the end of the financial year, going, oh my God, we need a mysterious gift to fall from the sky to help us fill this target because this target is way out. Emma, I've just spotted you've said something like that about a growth plan. You've got annual KPIs to meet as too. Not sure they're realistic. That's fair enough. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes it's I don't say it's rare for fundraisers not to have realistic KPIs. I think in the current climate we find ourselves in, our KPIs for income might be stretched, and we're working at kind of the ambitious level. If you're not, great, and you're hitting them, brilliant. But also you've put in here as well that you've got monthly KPIs on touch points with donors. Is there anything you want to add at all, Emma, that might help Tara with that one?
It's difficult really. I mean, I work very closely with our head of fundraising, so it's got, and obviously we have weekly catch up, so I get a lot of support from him. Not really, just doing the best we can actually. I have been very lucky because the financial budget for this year's major donor fundraising, because we're starting from scratch, they have actually reset it. So this was on a major, but actually I've done okay this year. So I kind of wish they hadn't now. It's just all added to next year. But yeah, I suppose it's just keeping the communications open. I think I'm very lucky where I work because it's quite a friendly team. Have a lot of contact with CEO as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just keeping the communication open about what I'm doing to reach the targets and expectations of not hitting target, really.
Yeah, and that's really key, Emma. You know, it is about the more you can as a fundraiser kind of advocate for what you're doing and people understand the value that you bring, especially major in the fundraising, the more willing they are to kind of work with you. And maybe don't just see major donor fundraising as like the savior that's going to provide a big chunk of income when we're in a tight pocket, because you know, it's lovely if we can do that, but also a lot of work goes in before we get to the ask. Sometimes so much work. We take the example of your donor, all those touch points and engagements to where we're going to take them, and they were ready to give. It was probably quite a bit of work to get there. It wasn't just a quick light bulb. Oh, we've identified that person, off we go.
Yeah, I think as well. I think if you're new to, so I've been fundraising for about 15 years, so, and I've done most of them, but I've mainly specialised in trusts and foundations. So what I'm finding difficult is the moment switching over is that obviously it's very measured. The trust and foundation, whatever you put out, you're going to get a percentage in. And I think I feel like, I don't know how to say it, but that's fine. I feel like I'm throwing stuff to the wind and kind of not having any kind of a way to able to track if money's going to come in. That's what I'm finding hard at the moment.
Yeah, and I think there's different ways to kind of overcome that, and it is, I mean, I always say that major donor fundraising sits in the grey. So there's a nice structure about trust and foundation fundraising, if anyone else dabbles in it as well. We used to have nice kind of ROIs and ratios to, you know, applications to grants coming in. You know, there's a process. There isn't a process with a lot of major donors. It can be, if they've got a family foundation, they've got a structured process. It can also just depend on what they want to do. So that can be quite tricky, but I think what can really help you is around prospect research, like really understanding that donor initially, to kind of think of the timelines you could be working to, but also, you know, going back and as you get to know them, tracking and recording what their preferences are and what kind of things have sped up a stage in the relationship. And again, I'm a big fan of having a major donor fundraising cycle. So it could be 6 stages or 7 stages or 8 stages donor cycle, to just help you sometimes put your KPIs against those to see where people are sitting. Are they sitting in more of an engagement and cultivation space for a really long time? Why is that? Is it a them thing? Is it an organizational thing? You know, have we not got the right ask in the pipeline? Have we not got the right project? Are we not kind of presenting it in the right way? And then also looking at, you know, how's that impacting our stewardship as well? And ideally, we want to get to a stage where you're, you know, securing multi-year or annual or regular major donor gifts from donors. So it's kind of working out what works for your organisation and for your donors to get into a pattern that feels quite regular and flowing. Again, not all donors sit in that pattern because, you know, we work in the grey, but you'll find that a large chunk potentially could. And you could create a proposition that allows that to happen. And you've got like an annual ask time of year, or, you know, different things. Okay. Oh, Jenny, what have we got in the comments? Really good question. I love how the what is viable breakdown can be applied to all income streams and not just major donors. 100%. So let me find that slide again. I agree. This is actually really important. It can be part of your case for support, but also just, you know, your funding proposition. What is viable, you know? So yeah, Jenny, I'm glad that is helpful to know what the organisation has accepted funding for and has done in the past, what it can do now in the present, which I love saying probable because we all know things can shift day to day, but, you know, roughly on the present at that moment, and then that future kind of wish list. And again, that could work for trusts and foundations, that could work for corporate donors, that might even work for your individual givers, and kind of income that might come from community fundraising as well. You know, your programs, projects, appeals may shift as well. So it's really good to understand that as part of your getting to know your organisation. And like I said before, you can revisit this however long you've been in your organisation. You don't have to be brand new, fresh in with fresh eyes. Vanessa, you've put a great question in that we've not touched on, I don't think. So you've said, I usually have success in getting donations when I meet with donors, but really struggle to get our unsolicited donations to give phone permissions. Any ideas how to get round this? And apologies, I may have jumped off this call. Oh, that's okay. I'll make sure you get a chance to listen to the recording if you had to jump off. This is a really good one. So you get success with donations when you meet with donors, but you struggle to get unsolicited donations to give phone permissions. So Vanessa, are you still on the call? And you could chat us through this. If you're not, I think I can have a stab at answering this one for you. I'm going to go for it. So, great. If you meet with donors, it's really easy, isn't it, to ask them what their preferences are, how they'd like to be kept updated. Do you know, do they want to be phone, email, post, all those things. Phone permissions, I'm assuming it depends how these unsolicited donations are coming to you. And I think that could be the challenge that you're facing. So, for example, I'm assuming that maybe they're giving a donation through a third party. So Enthuse or Just Giving, or even for a DAF, maybe like CAF. And then as part of them making that donation, they may be asked their contact preferences. And that might be where you don't get their phone permissions. Now, hopefully, if they're going for that third party, you get some form of permission from them, whether that's to email or to send them a letter. With any donation, you are allowed under our fundraising guidelines to contact a donor to thank them for their gift, unless they have said explicitly, do not ever contact me. But you are allowed to contact them to ask them, not ask them, got to be careful here, to thank them for their gift. And in that thank you, you could say that you want to check the contact preferences with them. And in that point, mention that, you know, you'd like to contact them by phone. And I would probably say why, because people do want to know how we're going to use their details. And obviously, where possible, include a link to your privacy policies as an organisation about how you use data, how it's handled. So people in their own time can kind of go to that and reflect and then come back to you with their answer. So I hope that answers your question. If not, Vanessa, and you can come next time, we can talk about it in more detail. Or again, by all means, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. Right. Oh, Cheryl, what have you got? You popped in the chat. What role would you say events play in building a major donor program? God, Cheryl, are you reading my mind? Because again, I've got one of these webinars coming up soon. You say, I'm encouraged by leadership to hold cultivation events, but in the past we have struggled to get numbers in the room, even when we feel we have an exciting speaker or exclusive insight to share. Oh, I feel you, Cheryl, here. Okay, so events. Major donor events need a purpose. They need to have a focus for what you want to achieve. And personally, I feel that a major donor event should be leading you towards that fundraising income generation opportunity. I don't think you should hold an event just for nice to have. That said, I'm not saying that you don't do things like big thanking events, but if you're doing that, you want the purpose to be about building that relationship with a donor in a fundraising manner, ideally. So, I would say that a program of events can be really exciting for major donors, but I think you've got to think about your own organisation and what works for you. So again, remember, major donors are really time poor. You know, they are busy people. You're obviously a UK-based charity. I don't know where you are, Cheryl. You may operate in an area where it's hard to get to. Or maybe you have to hold your events away from where your organisation is based. So that might sometimes cause a kind of disjuncture between your organisation and your cause. I think if you're struggling to get numbers in the room, then the event's not quite working for you. And I think you know that already. You're obviously doing your best because you get an exciting speaker or you've got exclusive insight. I mean, the best thing to do is have you thought about asking the people that you would invite to these events, your donors, if it's what they would like to do. You know, again, part of the engagement thing we're talking with Emma earlier, you know, if you want to reach someone, is this an opportunity to kind of reach out to them and say, look, we're looking at our major donor events program, or maybe don't call it that, but maybe call it like, you know, your events program, you know, and want to know if it's something you'd be interested in. And then, you know, would you be willing to talk to me about it? And if you can get a phone call, or you get a meeting, or even a virtual chat, you know, asking them, is it what they want? Do they want a virtual event? Do they, you know, what kind of thing would interest them? And again, go to the people that have probably been to the event and get some feedback as well. What did they enjoy? What would they do again? You know, it's sometimes uncomfortable to hear, but without getting that kind of feedback and response about how people have perceived it, you can't then kind of build your case with the rest of the organisation or the leadership to kind of say, well, this is actually what we think is best when it comes to cultivation events for major donors. So yeah, it's a tricky one. It's a really good one. I mentioned I'm doing a session. It is on fresh off the blocks. So I'm just looking at my notes. It's on the 20th of May. I'm doing an online training about major donor events, because I think this is something that we all struggle with as a sector, and we could improve on and kind of push to get right for our high level donors events and what really works for them. So Cheryl, I hope that's worked. If not, by all means, pop something else in the chat, or we can pick up again as part of this call.
That's great, thank you. I think the idea of actually asking people what they would like is, I don't know why I haven't thought of that before, so thank you very much.
Cheryl, don't worry. Do not worry. Sometimes what can feel really obvious and not thought of, you just need to sit in a call like this or chat to a colleague. So no, it's not wrong with you, Cheryl. Start there. Go and ask them. I'm sure you'll find something. And then the best bit is if you've asked them and they're supporters, you can then use that with your leadership as the evidence to say, look, these committed supporters have come to events. They like this. They love this. They hate this. Can we stop, start, continue, and go from there?
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
No worries. Great, that helped. Gillian, just got 5 minutes left, everyone. So if you've got a question, feel free to drop it in the chat. Gillian, you've put, our organisation offers small grants as well as development and support to the youth groups that we work with. What are your thoughts on involving major donors in decisions of the groups that their money supports? Almost like a mini DAF. Ooh. This is exciting. Dare I say, Gillian, this could be forming something of a giving circle, an early giving circle. What do I think? I think that is very viable. I don't know what type of organisation that you are. Obviously, you work with young people. Obviously, you're going to be really hot and key on safeguarding as well, which is brilliant. I would think about the ultimate young people and the people that go to your youth groups about what's in their best interest first, and how the involvement of a major donor's perspective could be a positive to that. Because obviously what you don't want to create is a load of other individuals saying, oh, but I think you need to do this. I would be looking at how can you create something where the young people are able to identify their needs and what they need or what they would like, and how can that be put to maybe major donors as a funding option. And that way you're more young people led, you're considering their thoughts, you're doing a bit of community participation in there. And then also, I think that would still be a viable and attractive proposition to possibly major donors, because they can kind of feed into that and donate towards. But then it's not being donor led, which I think is where you could get into a bit of a dangerous or difficult situation with kind of managing that. But yeah, I love it. You could have it, like say, like a mini DAF, a mini donor advised fund. You could set up as a giving circle. And again, that's something I've done several times with different organisations. So I'm happy to chat through that as well if you want to, and how that could be possibly a viable option. But I love it. Oh gosh, nearly 2 minutes. I'm so sorry. I'll let some of you go off for lunch or further calls. Jackie, oh, good question. How are people managing GDPR and consent with initial contact? In a nutshell, early on, have those conversations about consent. How would they like to be contacted? How would they like to hear from you going forward? And sharing your privacy policy so they can see. And it don't have to be like a really formal, like scary approach. Be really honest. This is how we use data. This is what we capture about you. Does this feel okay for you? And that should hopefully help. Again, Jackie, if that's not enough information, we can pick up a next call, or we can chat offline after this. I'm going to start wrapping up there because I've got a couple of bits that I want to share. So next month, it's April. We are not doing a live session, ever so sorry. It's one of those months. We've got Easter in there. We have got other bits and pieces going on at Money Tree Fundraising. So our next session will be in May. So I'm just going to drop our next session in the chat. So that is on the 14th of May. So if you want to sign up to that, you're very, very welcome to do so. That's live now. As I mentioned, I am running a series of training events at the moment. So we have the volunteer fundraising board. So if you're working with volunteers and you want to grow your kind of giving program with major donors and their networks and unlock some more big gifts that maybe are hidden from reach at the moment, I've just put in there the session that's happening next week, which is a volunteer fundraising board part 1. There is a discount code that's still live. If you'd like to sign up and you'd like the discount code for part 1, let me know. Find me on LinkedIn and I can share that with you. Or it's also all over the Money Tree Fundraising LinkedIn page. There is a part 2 to that as well that I'm running in April, and that is around what do you do once you've got your major donor fundraising board up and running. So it's all going brilliantly and you know you're getting there, but you might have some hiccups or you lose the momentum. Part 2, I've just sent the link in as well. That's running in April, so that will follow on from part 1. Also quite handy around managing difficult conversations. So potentially if you've got challenging major donors already or challenging prospects or internal stakeholders, that might be the one to join as well. And then as we are kind of got more trainings coming online, so I also mentioned I have on the double check the 20th of May the events for major donors. And then on the 30th of June, I've got a major donor new business session. If you want more information about how to sign up for those, I'm going to send you the link here in the chat for the Money Tree Fundraising newsletter. And you can sign up for that if you've not already, and you can receive updates through the newsletter about those upcoming events as well. Otherwise, check LinkedIn, we've got a Facebook page. We also have a website as well. I'll just pop that in the chat. And by all means, feel free to message me at any time. So thank you everyone for joining me. Sorry I've run over by 1 minute. I am a bit of a stickler for timing at times. Emma, you've put in there, offer an introduction to major donor fundraising for us newbies. I am very, very happy to do that as well. That possibly is part of kind of the major donor new business, but if you want to, I might come back to you and pick your brains about whether we do something similar or slightly different for that. Other Emma, sorry, we've really got 2 Emmas in the chat, sorry. At least, thanks, Hannah, signed up for the next one next week. When is the event webinar? Sorry, so the event webinar is the 20th of May. The link for that is not live on the website. I need to hit live today, probably tomorrow at this rate. But if you've signed up to the newsletters for Money Tree Fundraising, you will get that link for when the event webinar is live. And I will chat events for a good hour or so and answer even more questions and go to more details and all those handy things. So thank you very much, everyone. Lovely for the feedback for today. I'm glad it's really helpful. Go and enjoy the rest of your afternoons, the sunshine if you've got it. And yes, whilst we won't have a session in April, we will be back in May with one of these free ones. In between, I've got the volunteer fundraising board part 1 next Tuesday. We've got part 2 in April, and then we've got the Let's Chat, and then following on in May, where we've got the events training session and the Major Donor New Business, basically introduction to Major Donor fundraising on the 30th of June. Lots of dates. Sign up for the newsletter, and then I'll make sure you've got all of those to hand in emails. Okay, speak to you all soon, and thanks for joining. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Hannah. Thank you.
Bye.